Hector Balderas, State Auditor of New Mexico, candidate for United States Senate. Biographically was raised in Wagon Mound, New Mexico, in northern New Mexico. I'm a prosecutor and attorney by trade, and more importantly, husband of a school teacher and father of 3 children in public school. And one of my daughters has special needs, so we consider ourselves disability advocates as well in the community. Was raised by my grandfather and mother in public housing and on public assistance, Medicaid, food stamps. And I'm a product of New Mexico Highlands University in Las Vegas and University of New Mexico School of Law.
What proposals would you support or introduce that would cut the deficit while at the same time promoting economic growth?
Sure. Well, the first is there has to be tax reform. And a revenue generator would be allowing the Bush tax cuts to sunset and fade off into the past. Another area is to collect on Department of Interior oil and gas revenues that are being underbilled as we speak, according to the GAO. Another area would be in human resources to begin to encourage federal employees through attrition to take retirement packages. So I fundamentally believe both in cost and in positions, the federal government has to do a better job with less resources in the coming decade. Another area is to do a complete audit of all federal assets. Right now, the GAO has identified that we don't even have a good grasp of all the federal buildings and federal lands that we own, and begin immediate assessments on what it is that we really need to move forward. I would also continue the reform on the appropriations process. Even though they say that they've banned earmarks, there is still a considerable amount of pork that is going through the appropriations process without any specific accountability measures or methodology. And that type of pork spending has to stop. Furthermore, the GAO has identified that the IRS can do a better job in collecting its taxes, which also impacts revenue generation. I would continue to push all federal agencies, including the Department of Defense, to rein in their spending overseas. And we have a presence in over 100 nations right now, and it seems that we are far overextended when we have domestic threats, like poverty and the high school dropout rate, that I believe are not being invested at this time. So those are some of the areas from just deficit reduction that we would target and attack.
The second question is more locally based. Do you support the proposed Organ Mountains Desert Peak National Monument, and why?
Yeah, I mean, I'm generally always supportive of public lands designations and protection of wilderness. But I'm also a proponent of fairness and making sure that that all interests are considered. But I'm supportive of that.
If the Supreme Court were to strike down the health care law, which a lot of experts say they expect it will strike down at least part of that law, what steps, if any, do you think Congress should take to replace it?
That is a hypothetical. It's tough to say until the Supreme Court makes its final ruling. I know that they're very concerned with the mandate at this point. You know, the negotiations of that act was considered a private marketplace solution, and I believe that we need to continue to support portions of the act that survive if the whole act does not survive intact. Adding, though, to that position, I also believe that we need to continue to invest in preventative care and, more importantly, basic health care in rural areas. And I'm very suspicious year to year that accessibility rates are going to actually increase, and that we're going to reduce costs. So I think that the act to me was an important step, but as a senator and as a watchdog, we have to continue to make sure that New Mexico reduces costs of health care, especially in rural areas. And I'd be curious to see if we're able to drive down the uninsured number in any meaningful way. So I don't believe that the act will be enough in and of itself to drive those two factors to improvement.